Hey guys, Koki here. So with Zenless Zone 0 releasing in just under a few days, I decided to take a look at what the Bilibili folks, the CM folks, are actually cooking up, and I found this rather reliable tier list. I did look through the comment section as well to see that the general consensus of the CN community seems to be in favor of this tier list being quite objective, so I wanted to also cover this and give my personal take as well. Do note, before I proceed any further, disclaimer, this does not include the considerations of new units that have been released or announced, like the Piper, the Lucy, and also the CBT1 character Miyabi. So I'll add in my personal take when it comes to certain characters, whether they are boosted based on these announcements. And starting with the best tier, we're going to have tier 0. There are a total of 6 tiers here. Tier 0 contains 1 unit and 1 unit only, and that is Alan. Alan is an S rank ice attacker, and in Zenless Zone 0 attackers are of course your main DPS, and she is the rate up for our version 1.0 first half. And what she brings and why she is tier 0 is because she brings high DPS both in single target and AoE departments, and she looks like a freaking shark. So very cute little shark girl. And the launch environment is also extremely good for her because of course they are trying to promote her. The launch environment, i.e. the endgame shield defense, is going to contain a lot of stages that boast or boost the ice elements as well as electric elements. So these two elements in this tier list are going to be boosted slightly higher. But overall, I will say Alan is good because not only is she boosted, she also have complete teams with Lycaon as well as the Soukaku. So these two units are already available at launch, able to complete this ice team. And mono element teams are extremely strong in Zenless Zone 0. So if you have a complete team, you are definitely going to be favored higher than units that do not have complete teams at launch yet. But something that you have to consider is also that there is Miyabi. So Miyabi, like I mentioned, is a CBT1 character that people really like. She's an A rank ice attacker, so exactly the same as Alan except A rank. So just slight differences when it comes to the stats, but people have already claimed that she's extremely good, but they removed her. So I guess it's because Alan is the first rate up unit. So if you are actually waiting for Miyabi to come out, maybe you want to skip on Alan, but overall I think Alan is a tier 0 very strong unit. So moving on, next we are going to have our tier 0.5, and in this tier there are going to be 2 units, Lycaon as well as Zhu Yuan. So first, touching on Zhu Yuan, Zhu Yuan is a S rank Eater attacker, which is also main DPS, and she is the rate up unit for the second half of version 1.0. So you are going to be able to get Alan and Zhu Yuan if you do have the currency to pull for both of them. However, Alan is considered stronger than Zhu Yuan. Zhu Yuan is only on tier 0.5 because although Zhu Yuan is extremely strong as a burst DPS, her sustain capabilities when it comes to DPS front is not as strong. So overall, considering the DPS factors, right, Alan is stronger than Zhu Yuan. And what's more, when I mentioned just now, complete teams, very important, there is no Ether stunner right now, so her overall team strength is not as high. You have to use an off element stunner and cannot form a mono Eater team, although she's still extremely strong as a rate up unit. Moving on, next we have our S rank ice stunner Lycaon, which is our wolf bro, and our wolf bro here is extremely strong, firstly just based off his role. And I would just like to preface this, in Zenless Zone 0 currently there are 3 stunners, and these stunners are extremely important in your team composition because you always want a stunner to build up daze on the enemy. Once the enemies are in a daze state, they'll take more damage from the chain attack. So always need a stunner, and he is the best one the game has to offer as of a moment, a standard character S rank unit. And for him, what he does well is that not only does he do good DPS while stunning, he also pairs really well, like I mentioned, with Alan, with Soukaku, which is the technical best team at launch, right? The meta team at launch. But even if you were to not have Alan, you can still pair up with Soukaku, which is free, and then you can pair with any main DPS. It will also work as well because it's really good to play and he builds the days at an amazing rate. So really good unit at tier 0.5. Moving on next into the tier 1, we actually have 5 units over here, and starting with 11, she's an S rank fire attacker, and she does bring amazing DPS. And just like Alan, you can have a ready-made team at launch with Koleda as well as with the Bear Bro band. So why is she in tier 1 and not in tier 0? The reason I think is because, like I mentioned, at launch the environment actually favors ice and electric units. So being fire attacker, she is not as good in the endgame shield defense. However, if you were to compare her without these considerations, probably they are similar in rank, I would think so myself. The next unit we have on our tier 1 is going to be the S rank electric support Rina, and she pretty much can support any team. And why I say so is because she have this anomaly anomaly build-up res reduction. And if you don't know how the anomaly functions in Zenless Zone Zero, basically on the screen you can see, right, the different attributes will actually go and cause different anomalies, such as like shock, such as like freeze or burn, and these statuses will enhance the overall team synergy and will make them do more damage overall. But specifically for Ice, right, also why Ice is so strong is because it is suitable for hyper carries like Alan, since it brings about extra crit damage, and you all know, right, in games crit damage is really valuable, so being able to increase that in that anomaly form is really good. So Rina here can function in any team because it's a general anomaly build-up reduction, but she functions best of course with her electric team, which is Grace and Anby/Anton in a full electric team. And she's not only able to increase the penetration rate, which is for defense ignoring purposes for the team, but also more importantly she prolongs the duration of shock. So you can see why she's so good for electric teams, but also like I mentioned, right, general teams can use her as well, so T1 definitely deserving so. Moving on, next we are going to have the electric partner of Rina, which is Grace, an S rank electric anomaly type. And as an anomaly type, she excels in building anomaly for sure, but in particular shock, because she's electric type. And if you were to combine her with Rina, you're going to have perfect synergy, one that lowers the res reduction and one that builds up extremely fast. So perfect synergy, you want to use her in an electric shock team and then just round it off with an attacker like Anton, which is also electric type. But you can also use her in a disorder team. However, I've seen mixed opinions on whether disorder teams are strong at the moment, and it doesn't seem that they are that strong as compared to the mono element teams. Come launch, we will test it for ourselves to see whether it is even better, because there are some changes that they have definitely made to the characters as well as the signature weapon. So maybe there are some different weapons that can help to build this disorder team even better. But for now, this is what we have. And of course, the new unit Piper is at disorder type as well. So another thing that goes well for the disorder team if you do want to build that. Now moving on next to our A rank units in tier 1, we are going to first talk about Soukaku, which is a ice support. And she's great because firstly she does good AoE DPS, but more notably, right, as a support unit she brings about the buffs for the whole team's attack and also requires low fill time. So similar to a game like Wuthering Waves, whereby fill time does determine whether a unit is good, Soukaku is good in that sense. Don't really need that much fill time, and also is a free unit that pairs really well with Alan and Lycaon, which is, like I said, the meta team at launch. So this is why she is so strong. But even if outside of that team, right, Soukaku is also favored since the environment favors ice element and favors electric element. So if you build off element teams and you want a support unit, most likely you want to go for Soukaku if you do not have Rina already. Next, we're going to have the last A rank unit in tier 1, which is Anby. And for Anby, she is good for an obvious reason. She's an electric stunner, first being favored by the electric environment, and secondly, she is favored because of her role. Like I mentioned, there are only 3 stunners at launch, so if you do not have Lycaon, if you do not have Koleda, which is pretty possible since both of those units are actually S ranks, this free A rank unit is going to serve you so much good. So out of the gate, you're going to get her alongside Nicole, alongside Billy, and just investing in her, you're able to plug her and put her into any single team that requires a stunner. So extremely good unit, and this is why she is in tier 1. Now moving on, next we are going to have our tier 2, and there are going to be 3 units. First is in Koleda, the second one in Anton, and then the third one in Nekomata. So we're going to first touch on the Nekomata. So for Nekomata, she's a physical attacker, very strong individual damage dealer, but she does lack a complete physical team, which is what we consider a lot right at launch, and hence she'll be disadvantaged in endgame content like shield defense, which favors a certain element. So in that sense, she is disadvantageous, but I wouldn't say that she is outright hampered, right, because she can still pair with another physical attacker like in Corin or in Billy for a decent dual pairing, and then since she's lacking a stunner slot, you can just fit in the Anby. So a completely friendly team is born, right, as long as you have this Nekomata. And moving on, next we are going to have our Koleda, which is an S rank fire stunner. And just by hearing the role stunner, like I mentioned, extremely valuable in Zenless Zone Zero, don't want to repeat myself. However, what is more, she have the capability to do a combo attack. She's the only combo attack user at the game right now, I do believe, with our band bro. So both of these fire units, if you have them together, you can do combo attacks, which does pretty substantial damage. Now, you might be also wondering why Koleda is in tier 2 instead of tier 1, and the reasoning that the content creator gave was that Anby is favored in an electric environment. So electric environment is good, like I mentioned, electric and ice, while Koleda is fire. However, I would disagree somewhat because even if you were to consider Anby's strength, right, it's because she is a stunner that can be flexibly put in any team. Similarly, Koleda can be done the same, so I don't see why when Koleda is of a higher rank and does build days even faster than Anby. So definitely should be in tier 1. What is more, with the addition announcement of Lucy, which is a fire support unit, I think the Koleda stocks will move even higher. Moving on, next, we're going to have our second unit in Anton. So Anton over here is an A rank electric attacker. And for a start, he does do very good DPS or damage in his burst mode, right? So does a lot of damage. Basically, how you want to play him is that you want to daze the enemy and then put the enemy in shock and then come in. You just do so much damage. But at the same time, right, the problem with him is that this burst form does take energy to activate. So without his burst form, he's not as good, which means it's not as consistent. There's not enough sustained DPS over there. But the favoring of his element in the shield defense does bring his stock up a bit more. Another problem with him is that you do need to have 2 5-star pairings in Grace and Rina to utilize his potential, and what's more is that his AoE damage is relatively weak, which explains his ranking. Next, moving on to our second last tier, we're going to have tier 3, and here we have 2 free units in Nicole and Billy. Touching on Billy first, he is a physical attacker that focuses mainly on AoE DPS. However, even in the AoE DPS department, I wouldn't say he's the best, and what is more, his single target department is really trash. So facing any bosses, right, you pretty much don't want to use him, single target bosses. But there is special mentions of his cool animations, and you can see for yourself, right, his animations are pretty cool, so you get it for free if you want to invest in him just for the animations, right? Overall, Zenless Zone Zero isn't a difficult game, so if you are over invested, you can still make Billy work. And what is more, with Piper's release, which is a physical anomaly user, maybe there are some wonders to be had with Billy. So this is Billy for you. Moving on to our other tier 3 unit that is free just like our Billy is Nicole. Nicole is an A rank Eater support, and it's one of 2 units of the Eater element at launch. And she does focus on AoE gathering capability, so she does gather the enemies. But the problem with her lies in the fact that, like I mentioned, only 2 units. The other Eater unit is actually Zhu Yuan. So if you want to form a team with her, you do need to have Zhu Yuan outside of all element teams, of course. And even with Zhu Yuan, there is still no complete Eater team, and Zhu Yuan being a rate up unit doesn't help at all, especially being a lower half unit. So this is why Nicole isn't favored as much. But I do think that Nicole is somewhat underrated for her huge AoE gathering capabilities, and this is somewhat difficult to quantify, I do understand. If you were to look at strictly numbers and you cannot quantify the utility that the AoE gathering capabilities bring for you, it's hard to put her at a higher rank. But I think this might be something that is a mechanic that is underrated and can be more useful than it seems. Moving on to our tier 4, we're going to have 2 units here, and this is going to be Corin and our Ben Bro. So touching on Ben first, Ben is a rank fire defense type unit, and he is the only defense type unit in the game right now. As the name suggests, right, defensive unit, he does focuses on helping the team survive. But from CBT3, right, the difficulty of the game seems to rely around having more DPS. So it's time gated in the shield defense. So if there are stronger enemies in the future, stronger bosses that one hit KO you, then you really need defense units. Potentially, he might be better in that sense. However, if you do have Koleda, like I mentioned, right, the combo attack is the wombo combo. If you have Koleda, I think the stocks of Ben will definitely rise up. But if you do not have her, then not as good, definitely. And lastly, we're going to have Corin. Corin is a A-rank physical attacker, and she is a strong DPS unit with really cool animations, but her main limitations are her extremely short range with a chainsaw, and also the fact that she can only handle the enemies from like one angle, right? So usually if you swing, you can like swing have wide range, but her chainsaw actually just focus on that unit in front of her. So this is one of her problems, and physical teams are also not great at launch without a stunner as well, like I mentioned, right? So all the things going against physical teams make it so that Corin isn't as good as she can be. If there are better units, right, physical stunner being released, going to definitely increase her stats, but her animations are really cool, so you can definitely go for her if you just like her animations. Now overall, this tier list in my opinion is relatively good. However, as with all tier lists, it's extremely subjective, and for a game like Zenless Zone Zero, maybe tier list wouldn't make as much sense, so really take it with a grain of salt just for reference, right? I think it's fun to look at tier lists, but if you have any opinions on specific characters that you have tested yourself on CBT3, do leave a comment in the comment section below to let me know. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is Corky Gachas, signing off.